pessoal, bem-vindos a um evento super especial. Trends News Talks, nossa primeira versão internacional. Um prazer enorme de ter aqui Neil Redding, um futurista americano. O conheci no South by Southwest desse ano e ele nos concedeu lá uma entrevista, um bate-papo muito legal lá em Austin, que nós vamos transmitir aqui para vocês. E depois, a surpresa enorme, teremos muito mais gente importante, como nossa amada Marta Gabriel, nossos queridos Charles ao Quadrado, Betito e Schweitzer, e nossa malvada favorita, que a gente ama tanto, Ana Flávia Ribeiro. Nós entraremos ao vivo depois da gravação. E aí, pessoal, nós estamos aqui com um convidado internacional, portanto, nosso bate-papo será em inglês. Sim, e vocês sabem que quem tiver alguma dificuldade, já vai uma dica aqui que a gente usa muito no South by Southwest, um aplicativo chamado Otter, O-T-T-E-R. Este aplicativo, ele faz a transcrição do que está sendo falado. E ele faz a transcrição em inglês, ele tem um LLM, um chat GPTzinho, que você faz perguntas para ele, você pode pedir, inclusive, para traduzir. É uma maneira de quem tiver alguma dificuldade com o inglês, que possa ir acompanhando. E depois, a gravação ficará disponível com legendas nos nossos canais. Mas antes de tudo, eu vou pedir, cliquem no sininho, sigam o Trends News, sigam o Neil Redding, Marta Gabriel, Ana Flávia, Charles Schweitzer, Charles Betito, todos com rede, uma rede com muito conteúdo, e a gente está aí por vocês fazendo esse projeto do Trends News crescer. Vou pedir agora para a Patrícia, que faz o show acontecer, rodar a nossa gravação e vocês fiquem à disposição no chat, fazer perguntas, comentários, e a gente vai fazer muita interação. Vamos lá, Pati!
Hi, everyone. Welcome to a very special session of Trends News Talks. I am Renato Grau, and I will be here with you today for a session that was recorded in Austin during South by Southwest Festival, where I had the incredible opportunity to meet Neil Redding. Neil is a very famous keynote speaker, author, and also an innovation architect. He runs a consultancy that is called Redding Futures that works with spatial computing and emerging technologies aligned with business. Neil also presents himself as a near futurist. Neil, can you please explain a little bit what is this concept?
Yeah, absolutely. So near futurist, I've been calling myself this for a few years. I've really kind of been leaning into it a bit more in the past 6 months or so. And I think it's resonating a lot more for people because the future is coming at us so fast, right? That my stance is that the traditional practice of futurism, where people look further into the future, even the practice of foresight, as it's often practiced, is no longer enough because things are just coming so fast that prediction doesn't give us any time to do anything, right? I mean, the real useful way of engaging with what's emerging is to look at, as I do, look at what's emerging as possible today and how to translate that into immediate value, practical value, for brands and businesses and even for individuals. So that's what near futurism is about. The near future. Sometimes near future means a couple years out if you're really doing a larger scale kind of effort. But sometimes it means this week, next week,
Yeah.
because
So,
things are happening so fast.
so if you're a company leader, you have to work with these concepts to make the strategic planning.
Yes.
And do you think the leaders of the organizations are aware of the importance of applying futurism in their organizations?
I think so. I think most are. It's challenging because I think businesses are just not designed to respond so rapidly to this kind of change. I mean, the volume and the level and the rate of change, I think, that we're seeing now is so out of line with how fast businesses tend to evolve. You know, I mean, even technology businesses, I mean, even businesses like Google, say, or Apple, I mean, they're having trouble keeping up, you know, with how fast things are moving. And so it's no surprise that many more traditional businesses, you know, even CPGs or manufacturing or retail or healthcare, you know, I mean, they're having trouble. But really the simple way that I describe like the, you know, to engage with the near future is, and this is my bias as a technologist, like that grew up professionally as a software engineer. I studied computer science and philosophy, and so I've been spent the first half of my career really building software, leading teams that build software, and then the last 12 years or so, I've been really focused on doing more high level concept design and kind of innovation architecture, as I described there. Uh, but as a technologist, I'm really focused on, again, like identifying possibilities that are represented by new tools or new technologies, and then moving really quickly to say, okay, here's something that's possible. Let's connect this with some need or problem that a business has, right? And connect those dots as quickly as possible so that we can have hypotheses. Like if we did this thing, we would expect there to be this benefit to the customer or to the business, and then prototype that hypothesis, right? And the mode of engagement that I always want to be in with clients is coming up with ideas that we can prototype and test. And have that be the mode of operation. Of course, you still need to keep your existing business model running, but you always want to have this kind of portfolio of hypotheses you're testing, and the tools that are emerging now, AI, also spatial computing tools, also other emerging technologies, but it makes this prototyping and testing really so much easier than it used to be.
You know, what's the concept of ecosystem pyramid?
Yeah. So a few years ago, I had this realization, it was kind of during the pandemic, but I had been doing work, as Granat mentioned in my bio at this, I described it as the convergence of digital and physical for many years, right? I described doing software engineering and software development for a long time. And then, you know, almost 10 years ago, I started working with a large global architecture firm, Gensler, and ran digital experience design there. And so that gave me the opportunity, and I really got brought into this role because of my enthusiasm and vision for what digital can do in a physical space, right? It's not just about putting screens on walls and then making video run on those screens, but what else can digital do when it's in a space? Can it tell, you know, how many people are in an area, like how close you are to a certain thing, like how people are moving, you know, what can digital be in a space? And so I reference that now just to say I've been thinking about how digital and physical come together for a long time, and I've been using this language of convergent brand ecosystems, which is my own phrase, but it's really about bringing digital and physical together. Brand ecosystems you can just think of as all the different components that go into how a brand shows up in the world, right? So I mean, if you think of any brand, like any kind of CPG brand, maybe it's a I was talking to someone from Nestle the other day, actually Nestle in Brazil, and you know, so I mean Nestle has all kinds of food and beverage products, right? Each one of those may have a brand, and so that brand can show up in terms of everything from a logo and a visual design and a package design and advertising campaign material and all kinds of other things that go into that brand. And we can think of those as pieces of an ecosystem that work together, that kind of live in a state of connectedness, right? So bringing that to ecosystem paradigm, I've been thinking of it this way about how brands and businesses operate as this ecosystem model for years. And you know, in the pandemic, of course, we suddenly were disconnected from each other and from so many things and places that we relied on, right? And so it really caused me to just have create this much greater clarity about how connected everything is and how disruptive it is for things to not be connected. Obviously, supply chains, obviously communication, obviously travel, but but also just it's much deeper than that. So I just had this aha moment, this idea moment where I was like, we are raised in the West to think of the world as these named separate people, places, and things, like sure, Renato, you're Marcel, I'm Neil, and this is a table, and this is this room, and from when we're babies, our parents train us. The first things we say to our kids are like, doggy, table, TV, like the world is named things. It's named things. And that works to a certain level. I mean, it makes science work, it makes technology work, and it also has many drawbacks that we think of the world as these separate things. So I thought, what if we could see the world as inherently connected? What if we could see that everything is connected in the world? Because I really think it is. That things are much more deeply connected than we realize, So I realize that's a little bit of a long answer, but I'm telling you the story of how I arrived at this. And so the last few years, I've been thinking and writing and speaking about, I call it the ecosystem paradigm, which is just moving from this paradigm of distinction or paradigm where we interact with the world like it's separate things, to one where we see the world and operate like we assume things are connected, and we engage with them as if they're connected, and even look for connections, like look for how are these people connected? How is this behavior and this desire and this purchase connected? Or how, because these things are connected, what else is possible? It sounds abstract. Even the word paradigm, some people are like, what does paradigm mean? But it's really just a set of ideas or assumptions we think about the world that informs how we engage with it, And so I'm finding that this is really useful from a consulting perspective, like when I work with businesses and we look at the whole business model, thinking about all the points of connection is really powerful for creating solutions.
Most of people that doesn't know the power of the VR, AR, and spatial computing thinks only about games. But in your opinion, how the most impact this kind of technologies can do in our lives or our business?
Yeah. So, I mean, spatial computing, I think, has now become a term that more people are using thanks to Apple's new Vision Pro, right? That's what Apple's decided to call it, spatial computer. And it's a term that's been around for a long time, but I mean, that's what's brought the term into the public conversation more. And yes, there's a lot of immersive gaming, VR has done that. VR has also been used even more successfully from a commercial perspective as a training approach, right? Most of the large companies in the world now are using VR for training workers. It's very useful for that. But spatial computing, I mean, another huge benefit of it is the ability to place digital content and objects at specific locations in physical space so that you can see them, using augmented reality on a phone, for example, and also using glasses or a headset. Although most of these headsets that we see now, whether it's Meta's Quest or Apple's Vision Pro, I mean, those are not things that you wear out in the world, really. They're not designed for outdoor use. Of course, the phone people use everywhere. And I spent a lot of last year working with a spatial computing tech startup called Alki Labs, and that company was building a general purpose way of setting up a coordinate system in a space that you can then, using only QR codes, arrive in the space, scan the QR code, and then the phone is in this invisible 3D coordinate system and then can see digital content, digital labels, digital 3D objects that have location in the space. Like there could be things over on a table or behind that podium or up against this wall. And all of that is very useful in the context of retail stores or warehouses, other kinds of places where, like retail is a good example because both people who work in retail and need to restock or clean up messes or figure out what should go where, placing digital content in that 3D space can be very helpful, right, for communication and for guidance and so on. And then for shoppers, and this has been a use case that's coming for a while, being able to quickly find, without a store associate, without a human to help you, you can find, where if you're in a grocery store, where's the milk, where is the Nestle chocolate, where is the whatever. And then see promotional information, discount information, shopper marketing kinds of things are really useful. So this is much easier to understand if I had a visual. but hopefully that makes sense. I mean, if you just think of, and Mark Zuckerberg has actually talked about this a few times over the past few years, is that when you think generally about spatial computing, which is really just about giving computers an understanding of the physical structure of our spaces, right, and of physical objects, it means that instead of all the digital content happening in this flat 2D context, it can start to show up in physical context in the world. And a lot of information is so much easier to understand when it's in physical contexts. You know, like I'm looking at this chair over here right now. Even if I describe to you something about the color or the shape of that chair in the abstract, you would have some idea of that in your mind. But if I showed you in the context of that chair, when you're in front of it, it'd be much easier to understand because it's about that object. You know what I mean? So connecting digital with physical
get us closer to the reality because the concept of only the metaverse is very away from us.
Yes.
I mean, when you have mixed reality or something like that, it's easier to understand the things. And talking about the new generation of gadgets, do you believe that one of the next visions Pro or something like that could be like a PCI interface, not inside the brain, but something that works directly on your brain instead of using the eyes?
Yes is a short answer. I think that some very smart people are working on this.
Yeah.
It's a bit scary.
Yeah,
I'd say.
that's it.
And I have people that I've worked with over the past year who feel like augmented reality, the kinds of things we were just talking about, the digital objects in physical space, is one step away from direct brain interfaces, right? In other words, they're talking about the communication value of putting information next to a physical thing or in physical context. But theoretically, anyway, and even better, even more precise way to communicate would be if our brains could just be directly connected. Because language is very imprecise, really. I mean, if I say to you, I'm thinking of a black cat with a white stripe. You have some image of a black cat with a white stripe, but it's not exactly the one that I have, right? We know it's in this, it's roughly the same, but we might not, if we drew it, it's not the same. Language is never going to get us there, but some people have the idea that direct brain interfaces could get us there. So I don't know if you're thinking about BCI for communication or for control of things. I mean, a lot of people have been working on BCI for, like
For having disabled people.
there's that too.
Yeah.
Moving some mouse or your direction computer to,
Yeah.
you can use it again a mobile or a computer. But it's dangerous, because when you have your cellular, your phone, you can leave it and you go ahead. But if it's inside of you, this is not dangerous about privacy, about mental control, about subjective thoughts. What do you think about
It is dangerous.
it?
Short answer. I mean, it's there's a whole conversation about cognitive liberty, right?
Yeah.
Like freedom of thought, freedom to think what you want to think. And you can certainly imagine that having something that interfaces with your brain could constrain what you can think. I mean, it could have an impact on what you're able to think. And to be fair, we do have constraints already on what we can think, right? I mean, at a basic level, it's true that we can only think. It's not entirely true, but it's almost entirely true that we can think what we have words for. Like the things we don't have words for, we can't really think about because we think in language, right? And so this is why it's so valuable, I know, and I'm not there yet, but to have to be multilingual, right? If you can speak multiple languages, you can think more things because there are different things that are thinkable in different languages, right? So I think we understand that already as humans. I mean, but interfacing directly with the source of thought, with the brain, has the potential to, I'm saying, really control or constrain what we're able to think. And there's a way in which attention driven, it's like social media is today, whether it's TikTok, Facebook, or Instagram, like tools like this are already designed to kind of control what we think, in the sense that even just simply showing you more of what you're engaging with is a way of keeping you focused on that kind of content and that kind of idea,
Like an addiction.
like an addiction.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's so we already have tools that kind of, I mean, we might say we still have the ability to turn it off or put it down. But it's also fair to say that as an addiction, I mean,
You
Word-
can, but you don't do it.
the word addiction, I think,
Yeah.
means, right, that it's very hard, and some people might say it's impossible to stop. Like, you might want to stop, but we can't stop, right? It's very hard to stop. And so, but that's by design, right? That's how these tools are designed, because they make money when you're paying attention. And so you just imagine the direct brain interfaces. We're all saying the same kind of thing in that it's just, it feels very dangerous. That's,
But truly, we can't avoid it. We have to deal with it because it will happen.
I think so. And I think it will happen. I kind of generally feel like everything that can happen will happen. I mean, humans are driven by curiosity to just like, let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can do. And like, there's always going to be some smart, obsessed person or people who just want to do some crazy thing and want to make it happen, right? And they will make it happen. So, like, to me, the optimistic way to think about this is that it's forcing public and society level conversations about these things that are, like yesterday that we had a black rabbit, not black rabbit, white rabbit.
White rabbit, Vanessa and Luciana.
Black rabbit is a different thing. So a white rabbit,
It's cute too.
You have to have diversity.
Yes.
Diversity also in rabbits.
It's true. Rabbits have diversity issues.
Yeah.
TBI for rabbits. Now what was I saying? Oh, someone raised a question of now just see, my mind's in control. Now I'm just thinking about rabbits. I'm thinking about rabbits and the colors of rabbits.
Elon Musk out of that, right?
We were talking about cognitive liberty and freedom of thought.
Yeah, that's it.
Brain computer interfaces.
Yeah.
And after that, ask you or said to you that it's not avoid. We cannot avoid about this. And you said about you were talking about it with some people in white rabbits. Yeah,
Yes. White rabbit meetup and yeah, I don't remember what the point was. It'll come back. But I mean, these are all they're challenging issues. Oh, I guess the thing we were talking about yesterday is that someone raised the point that these large language models, these AI tools, are often showing. This person used a specific example of someone in Brazil used a tool and a prompt, gave the prompt something like a powerful black girl in a favela, right? And every image that came back had she had a gun.
Yeah.
And
Bias.
this person had, was saying, this is a problem. We don't want these tools to be showing girls with guns.
Yeah.
Right. And then someone else in the room said, but that's the reality. Like, the reality is kids in favelas often have guns, and
True.
it is so that means it's part of the training material that, that these models get. There are understandable reasons why kids have guns. It's like they legitimately may need to protect themselves. It's a dangerous place. But really, this other person in the room was making a point that these tools are just showing us the reality that we live in already. And so that the challenge is,
If you want to finish your thoughts.
Sorry by that.
I guess at the end of the thought there was just that these tools, particularly AI models, machine learning models, are just holding up a mirror to us as humans, right? It's like they're trained on material that reflects actual human activity, actual human behavior. And, this person just made the point that the problem is not the tool, it's not the AI, the problem is human behavior. Like, we need to solve life in favelas, we need to solve violence, we need to solve taking care of people. And the same kind of thing is true with these tools. Without human reinforcement or human guidance, it's often pointed out also, like if someone types in a prompt that says doctor, almost everything is always going to be a man, right? Even though there are female doctors, right? Well, because most doctors are men or have been, or that's what the training data set is. And so this is why I'm saying I think it's useful to think of it. It's just a mirror. Like you show up in front of a mirror, you look at yourself and like, I don't like this. I'm gonna change something about this. My hair's not right, my face isn't right. But then that's information that you can use to change.
The problem is not with the mirror.
Yeah, the mirror is just showing you what's there.
The reality.
You know, so
And
I
then
think,
the example that you said, the Black Girls in Favela, is related to the quality of data. We have this reality in Brazil. It's true.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but it's true.
Yeah.
So we have to change not the software, the algorithms, but the quality of data. And for we having better data, we have to improve the quality of the life of the people from Favela.
yeah. So I guess I feel optimistic about it. That's a long way of saying. I'm
Yeah.
optimistic that these tools kind of focus our attention on some aspects of the reality that we create that need some attention. That can help us. Like if we don't like what we see in the mirror, right, then there's some work for us to do. You know?
Perfect. One last message. Do you believe in a utopic world or a dystopic world, or neither of them?
I think it's like a false dichotomy, meaning I do think reality is what we create together. I don't know that there's any perfection or a perfect world, but I do think what we have on this planet, like we have all the resources that we need to actually create a great life for almost everybody. And I think there's a huge opportunity for us to come together as humanity and really do that. And it might sound like a very easy thing to say or just some pie in the sky like this, but you know, I'm encouraged by the fact that I think it's only been very recently that humans have started to operate at a global level. You know, I mean, even though we've had 500-600 years of like the age of exploration, right? I mean, starting whatever 1492 in Portugal. It's really just been in the past 30-40 years, I think, that have really started to think more globally, instant global media. We had global TV and satellite TV and the internet. And I think we're just starting to think of ourselves as a global species, as a global entity, think of the planet as being made of these ecosystems that we're all interdependent with. So I feel like we can be given a little bit of patience. Like in some ways we don't have that much time and then we've got to solve certain big problems now, but I would say I'm optimistic. Maybe I don't know about utopia, dystopia. I do think, I mean, dystopia usually refers to stories. And I do think we need to stop telling so much dystopian stories. You know, I think we can do much better at telling stories because stories create reality.
Yeah.
And this is why, like I mentioned Star Trek, I love Star Trek because it's not without violence. There is violence, there is conflict, but people engage productively with that. It's like, the assumption is that, I mean, the whole narrative of Star Trek is that we live to better ourselves, right? It's post money, it's post scarcity, it's we come together. Federation, certainly.
The Federation, yeah.
Is about, you know, and Jean-Luc Picard says this in one of the early films that we live to better ourselves. Like that's the goal, and which is moving to me. I find it a beautiful summary of like if money is no longer a thing, if everyone has what they need, then well, we live to better ourselves, and we keep discovering what it means to better ourselves.
Like Star Trek, you don't have to conquer new worlds. You have to explore new worlds and make a better universe.
Yes.
Well said.
Real. Sorry.
Thank you, appreciate so much, man.
Bom, estamos de volta. Olá, pessoal, estamos de volta novamente ao vivo, aqui depois de uma entrevista incrível com o Neil Redding. E gostaria de falar com vocês que temos a honra de ter Marta Gabriel, Ana Flávia Ribeiro, Charles Schweitzer, Charles Betito, Martinha já está fazendo o sinal de Star Trek, foi onde a gente terminou a entrevista com o Neil. E gostaria de falar com vocês, quem está aí, continue seguindo o Trends News, compartilhe nosso projeto, muito importante para a gente. E nesta primeira versão internacional do Trends News, nós vamos fazer a sequência em inglês para poder bater o papo aqui com o Neil Redding. Lembrando que depois a gravação vai ficar disponível nos nossos canais com as respectivas legendas em português. E quem estiver com alguma dificuldade agora, baixa o aplicativo aí, Otter, OTTER, que ele faz a transcrição do áudio e tem um chat GPTzinho que ajuda a fazer as interações. E fiquem à vontade de fazer suas perguntas no chat. Well, my dear Neil, your interview was great, delicious. We have a very nice chat in South by Southwest. I appreciate it a lot. I've watched it again, and it was really great. Thank you very, very much for your time in South by Southwest, and you accept our invitation here.
Muito obrigado, meu amigo. As I shared, I'm muito pouco Portuguese, but I'm learning. So thank you to everyone for having me here and for being willing to speak in English while I'm still learning Portuguese.
Perfect. Let's go for the first question that I will make again for you and for my dear Marta, because she's also a futurist. So I would like to know about your concept of near futurist. I would like you to explain again what this means and why you call yourself this. And after that, I will listen also, Marta, about the concepts. Is okay for you?
Absolutely. Yeah, Marta, we're good. So I've kind of grown up as a technologist and really been focused in my 30-year career on building things, and I really want to see things built in the world. And so I've been working with emerging technologies like AI and spatial computing and voice interaction and things like this for many years, chatbots well before ChatGPT. And because I work with emerging technology, people have often said, "Oh, you're a futurist." And the term futurist didn't quite land right for me. It wasn't quite right. And I thought, it's because I really value the work of people like Marta, like many other futurists that do foresight and prediction and trends and that kind of futurism. But what I've realized the past few years that I started calling myself a near futurist is that the future is just arriving so fast now that I believe that what's most useful, at least to business leaders and brands and companies I work with, is to focus on what's emerging already, what's emerging, new possibility that's emerging today-ish, today, roughly now, and connecting that with immediate practical value for brands and businesses and organizations and for people. So near futurism is really about connecting the possible with the practical now. And I work closely and really value, the work of, I would say, proper futurists as well, because I think there is, value in prediction, of course, and foresight as well.
Perfect. What about you, my dear Marta?
I like very much the concept of a near futurist. Actually, when I was studying and taking my certification, I had argument about 10 years, because it was 7 years ago, and at the time I said 10 years is too far because we are speeding so fast. And the foresight considers 5 years like trends or something you can predict more seriously. But now, especially after pandemics, the speed is so fast that I think it's very correct to approach a little bit to near here and think a little bit more 10 years as more for not the possible or the preferable something like a draft, and think a little bit more. I like that. I like that very much. Also, I like very much another concept that is the big history or long now. I think you have met people from the Long Now Institute that thinks a little bit more, okay, not 5, not 10, but maybe 10,000 years beyond the human. And I like it this very much also because we are here doing a lot of things that messes with the planet and everything. And so I like both concepts, near and very far. So we can think a little bit more broader than just like here. So I like very much.
Martha, I'm so excited that you mentioned long now, actually. Like I grew up being a fan of Brian Eno's work and particularly ambient work. And maybe you know that the musician and producer Brian Eno, is one of the founders of the Long Now Foundation. And I remember getting to see him speak on stage in San Francisco. I forget when it was, whenever the Long Now Foundation was created. And yeah, so you and I, we should have a follow-up conversation because I think what he had to say was so powerful. And I think it really made an impact on you as well, right? To expand our minds into thinking in a more patient way, in a more long-term way, in a more sustainable way, right? It's kind of an indigenous concept in some ways, right? Think about many generations. So, but I'll leave it at that because I know that's not our topic for today. Long now.
we can get another one. We can meet again, talk only about long now.
Perfect. Let's talk a little bit, Neil, about practice. You work with business leaders to help them navigate the near future. Is it true?
It's true.
I think it's great. I have been working with digital transformation for all my life, and I love to see the technology implemented, not only the theory. So what do you do different and important in this concept, applying this concept in with the business leaders?
Sure. So, I think you, Renato, and many others who have worked with digital transformation or helped businesses evolve and incorporate and adopt new technologies will find some of these ideas very familiar. So near futurism is a term that I've been using, but there's some similarity to other things. The big consulting firm McKinsey a number of years ago introduced this idea of this three horizons model, which some of you may be aware of, right? Which is the idea that the current horizon or horizon one is just business as usual, the current operating model, the current business model. Horizon two is, looking at, adjacent, similar but somewhat different product, services, things the business could evolve into. And then the third horizon is things that are further out. They're not really adjacent or next to the current business, but new technologies or new possibilities that are further out that tend to be introduced to the conversation by foresight practitioners or futurists. And the McKinsey stance was essentially companies should be spending some amount of time on each of these horizons all the time, right? That it's important. And this was in an era, they may have introduced this 20 years ago, but as the concept of disruptive innovation started to become popular, there were more, Clayton Christensen wrote this book, The Innovator's Dilemma, to talk about how businesses that once they're very established and have a highly profitable business model or set of products or services, it's very hard for them to innovate, right? So all of us, we're nodding our heads, right? We've been through this. We understand what it's like to work with businesses that are stuck. So what I really try to do with near futurism, right, is that many of these businesses, they may bring in a futurist or have someone talk about the future in an executive retreat or some kind of lunch and learn or something like this, but it's very hard often for big businesses to really take action on something that is horizon three, further in the future. And so partly because I'm just really always excited about what new technology can do. And also, as I said, because I really want to get things built, I want to see things actually change in tangible ways. You know, what I'm trying to do with my work as a near futurist is say, and it's easier now, right? As you said, Martha, the pandemic, but also generative AI, right? Since November 2022, ChatGPT, right? Of course, things have been moving so fast that no one can keep up, even those of us who try to keep up. But the point is, the work that I do is very focused on, okay, let's look at your existing business model. Like, what is the practical state of the business today? And then the second phase is, what are the possibilities, the new technology enabled capabilities that are emerging now, or we can see emerging over the coming few months. Like today, we're thinking a lot about agents in the AI space, right? It's not soon we're going to have not just chatbots, but also agents that we can delegate to and participate in teams and projects and things. But so these are examples of things that are kind of emerging in this near future today, the next 3-6 months. And in the context of a business model, like, have business leaders get their hands on this technology, so to speak. Like, we create these workshops where they can really try things out and test things and have a firsthand personal experience of what they can do. And then once you have that experience, it's easier to, in a workshop context, connect these new possibilities with practical aspects of the business. Where practical, I mean, like, what are the problems that are really top of mind? Like, leadership meets this quarter. What are the top 3 problems you're trying to solve? You know, or what is this year's budgetary agenda, or things like this, right? So really trying to bring the emerging possibilities into practical alignment. So I know I'm not the only person doing this, but this is like what I mean by near futurism and how I apply it in the work I do.
Perfect. Martha, you have so many people, so many business leaders watching your lectures, your classes, also reading your books. Talking about the Brazilian leaders, do you think they are aware of the needs of implementing new technologies, digital transformations in Brazil?
I think digital transformation, yes. I think they passed from denying or just being curious. They are really serious about that, I think, from 5 years to now, before pandemics. But I don't think yet everybody is aware about the importance of foresight. Because foresight is like connecting future with your present actions. And we, as human beings, we have a tendency of thinking short terms. So the greatest advantage, in my opinion, benefits of being focusing on foresight is that you at least know that you cannot think in short terms. You have to think a little bit broader, and you're not going to see if you don't use some methodologies to do that. So one of the things I try to do, because there is a term here in Brazil, I think it's about ambidextry. You think about the future, but you act here in the present. But one thing I think is very useful, I have been doing this in lectures and conferences and chatting with people, is teaching how to see signs of change. Because when you are able to see signs of change, you can take apart what is just noisy and what really can transform the next years. And one very good exercise I have been doing with them is I have it showing them signs in the past and how it evolved to now, and how it couldn't be predictable like a trend, and how long did it take from the past to now, and how fast it's going now from a sign to become a real transformation with several possible scenarios, etc. And the other thing, I also have my first background in engineering, so for me it's very important to apply. To apply. So it's very important to think, but the the thought is a way to understand how we can make better from all these things to have a better day now, next step. And I always say, I love a quote from Alan Turing, and he used to say, I cannot see much further what I have to do in the future, like 50 years from now. But I do know a lot of things I have to do now and to do next step. So I think this is something that inspires me every day. So what can I do? I know a lot of things I have to do now in direction to the future that can be better for all of us. So I think we do the same thing, all of us here, maybe with different approaches, but and our job, I think, is to spread this and help more people to understand the connection between present and future. And also, I like very much, Neil, what you say about the ecosystem. Everything's being taught like connected. We have been talking a little bit more about quantum computing. And one of the things they say all the time is the biggest lie we have been told is that we are separated. So we are all connected. I like this very much, this concept very much. So this is my 2 cents.
Perfect. And Trends News has the main goal of spreading so many news and trends and like that. It's wonderful. Anna, that's you now.
Okay. Again, thanks, Neil, for having us. Before I start with my with my first question, I would like to thank you because you have explained some of my main concerns that made me not move it, but try to balance my technological life with my option to bring back to university in order to study philosophy as a way of understanding the world. And I could also not agree more when you say that being polyglot, it's probably one of the most important things that someone can or could do this nowadays, because yes, it is absolutely true that you can think about things that you can name. So I know that you've been struggling, you told us you've been struggling with Portuguese. I would like to encourage you, if you have opportunity, to struggle with ancient Greece, Greek. I had the opportunity to study ancient Greek in my studies at university, at philosophy university. And you know one thing, one of the main, as you worked previous as an architect, one of the main points that made me wonder is how they define the difference between shape and content, or between form and substances, you know, that kind of opposite things that nowadays it's easily to approach to VR or to AR studies and way of doing things. So again, thanks for expressing this, because, you know, I've been arguing with my colleagues and with people around me that we, in order to better create whatever it means, a better future for us, we should to abroad our ways of seeing things. So yeah, yes, thank you.
Wow. Anna, it's amazing. I love all this, and Renato, clearly we need to schedule another 5 or 6 of these, right?
Great.
Because we have so many things to talk about, and I studied philosophy and computer science also.
Oh, really? So yeah. So I mean, when we were speaking about language, I was seeing Wittgenstein here in front of me, and me struggling with German stuff and so on. So yeah, definitely we have to schedule another meeting. And this next one, it's going to be half in Portuguese and half in English. So prepare yourself, okay? Okay. So, but regarding my question, I was hearing your speech at South by Southwest, and I have to bring this question to the table. You spoke so much about reality. You spoke so much about the nature of reality. And I'm having a second question about this, not now, in another moment. So in order to better explain or to go further to our audience. So why the philosophical stuff? What's the point for a businessman and for our business in order to, why should people paying attention to this question and to this broader question, not only business, but in a ample spectrum?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this, Anna. I think it's interesting. When I was putting together this talk for this year's South by Southwest, and I had been talking the last couple of years, the previous year at South by Southwest, I did a co-presentation about the ecosystem paradigm that Renato and I talked about there in the video, and how everything is connected and how we can start to see things that way, which is a bit philosophical. But yeah, as I was developing this year's talk, it really came to me that, in fact, how important it is that we realize that the realities we live in are largely our own creation, right? Things like, there's simple things like money, like the concept of scarcity, like lots of other things that are so powerful and control outcomes in the world and in business are made up ideas that we then agree are real. And given these very, very challenging problems that we have at the level of humanity on this planet, it feels to me like it would be irresponsible, right? Not to, to just talk about, well, this is fun technology, we can do these fun things with it, or these are interesting things. I mean, yes. And also, what are we doing to create the conditions for a thriving, abundant future for humanity, right? And you spoke to quantum mechanics, right? And also, Martha, you mentioned Turing and, sort of historical computer science kind of concepts. One of the things I realized is that, quantum theory, you saw in my talk, the quantum theorists, are arriving at this realization that what is fundamentally real is a result of our participation. One quantum theorist I quoted in the talk says, that we live in a participatory universe, that what we do and how we interact determines a lot of what is in the universe, right? And similarly with neuroscience, right, that we're hallucinating reality. This is a leading neuroscientist who's been on the stage at TED, Anil Sin, right, talking about this. So, and then of course, many religious traditions and psychedelic experience and all of this, like we're humans in all kinds of different ways have been experiencing that reality is largely a result of how we interact with it, right? Like we experience what we expect to experience to a large degree. So, I was thinking like, this feels like there's something really valuable here for the work that we all do in the professional or the business world, because so much of the conversation that happens, especially when we go and try to engage business leaders in any kind of transformation, whether it's digital or cultural or diversity related or sustainability, right? There's like, well, we can't do that. That's not possible. That's not how things are done. We've always done it this other way. And so my goal here, to try to bring this long story a little bit shorter, is I want to help people, just open people's minds, right, to realize that so much of these constraints, these rules, or these, that we work with are not real. They're made up, and that we can actually work with different constraints, different ideas. And I think that changing how we think about the future, even things like Martha's pointing to the long now, like just doing exercises, using language, using ideas that help us get outside of this quarterly earnings result focus, that business leaders are in, it's essential if we're going to have the kind of future we want.
Renato, if you allow me just to finish this, because it is very rare to find someone in technology that can dance between concepts and between disciplines like Neil is doing today. So first of all, thanks. And second of all, I heard some echoes here of Maturana and Varela and autopoiesis, but I think we should find another time to discuss this. And probably I'm going to bring some of these in my second question if we have time enough. So thank you.
Marta, I would like to listen about you.
Yes,
about
exactly.
I think Timmy, you
Sorry,
also...
Martita, I forgot to ask you. I'm sorry, I was a little bit.
No. I just would like to say a few words on that because I am fascinated about the concept of reality. And what concerns me, I couldn't agree more with you. I think also that we always had different realities. Each one of us lives in a different reality long before any technology. But my concern now is our reality in some part is shared, and it creates a common ground for all of us. And I think my problem today, my concern actually, not my problem, is with the shared reality. We are losing some part of that as we can create our own reality much faster and multiple ones in several environments. We are living a collapse in several ways of what we can and we are sharing. And this is not a question, or I don't have the answer for that. I have only concerns. But I think we need to watch this and follow very closely, because it is like something that if it goes to the wrong direction, we are going to have more and more problems. We have to find a way to keep a common ground in humanity. Just that. And then I think we can have another talk only about reality, what defines and how we can live.
I love that, Marta, and I share that concern that, on the one hand, digital technology and universal connectedness digitally, right, makes possible all of these personalization capabilities that can be really powerful in a commerce context, in a social context, social media context, all these things. And just like filter bubbles, right, in social media, it can also fragment society so that we don't agree on what's real. And maybe to your point, it's not even so much like we don't have to agree necessarily on, what foods we like or what colors are our favorites or things like this, but we need to be able to agree, like we need to do something at the planet scale about climate, or we need to be able to get along and not just make each other wrong about everything, and so yes, this is, I would love to participate in a conversation that's focused on, shared reality, because I think this is something that really needs to be discussed that really isn't being discussed. So we could, as we say, put a pin in that. Maybe that's a topic to cover another time.
Anna?
I'm jumping in from now, okay, from this, in this whole conversation. Yeah, and I think that fragmentation of reality tends to go deeper and deeper, but according to the way that we are developing our own realities, mainly connected to VR or to artificial intelligence. But VR, it's a big issue for me. You told us, you have mentioned neuroscience. I have some nice friends that are really working on this, and they have big concerns about how much can we go until we break our conception of the common reality. We need some kind of realism. We need some kind of ideal that we can work on together. And according to this, VR, okay, and artificial intelligence plus VR, yes, they are going to release a totally new world for us. But the main point is, are we ready as a species for this? But I don't think that we should go into this now. Otherwise, people are going to tell that I'm deviant with the subject. But okay, that's my point.
Okay, Charlie Schweitzer, how are you doing today, my friends?
Just doing great. Thank you for inviting me for this one, Renato Grau, and I'm very pleased to talk to Neo. I want to explore the other things that are in the captions of Neo. He's saying he is an expert on such as subjects as AI and also some visual computing, etc. So I want to cover some of that, okay? And Neo, for Trends News, I cover the gaming industry. So I will discuss a lot about gaming, okay?
Sounds good.
Great. So besides the gaming industry, where we can clearly see the potential of spatial computing and AI merging together, myself, I had an experience of driving an F1 car inside of one of those simulators and it was awesome. I would like to explore a little bit where can we find some of that being applied to business? Is there any other fields we can see spatial computing more applicable than AI today? Because nowadays we see AI everywhere, but spatial computing, not so much. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's a great question and great to be with you as well. So many of you might know, I mean, certainly if you've worked in XR, right, VR, AR, spatial computing, you might be aware that it's certainly correct that it's still, I attempted to say early days for adoption of VR, like face computers, right? Things that people put on their face and get really immersed in. For gaming, like gamers aren't really using these very much, and just sort of everyday people. I don't really like the word consumers, but in the U.S. people will say consumers. Like just regular people are not really using it very much either. There's maybe 10 or 20 million people that have bought Meta's headsets, for example, and others are smaller. But for everyday usage, but where VR particularly has a very well established value proposition or use case is in training, worker training within large companies. It's now, and I mentioned this in my talk, I mean, there's enough companies now using VR for immersive training simulations, both to learn to work on mechanical things and devices and like physical things, but also interpersonal skills. You know, to have simulations like many people, especially older people, need training in diversity and inclusion, right? Like men have a hard time, for example, like treating women as equals in the business context. Still sad, but true, right? And I think VR and immersive simulations have been really effective in helping people learn these kinds of things. So training and education broadly are two categories of use case, we could say, where VR, spatial computing are really, really valuable and already have proven value and widespread use, right? They're not as celebrated as much in the hype-driven mainstream media or industry media, but it's mostly because it's similar to IoT, right? Like for 10 years ago, whatever, we heard about IoT all the time, Internet of Things. We don't hear about it anymore. It's not because the technology went away. It's now the technology is just everywhere. It's part of how business operates, right? So there's just a difference, obviously, between the hype wave, the hype cycle, and actual adoption, right? What's also true with spatial computing is, and I talk about this a little bit in my talk also, is that spatial computing fundamentally is about giving computers the ability to understand and interact with the physical world, objects in the world, including our bodies, right? And so but robots and autonomous vehicles, whether they're cars or drones or things like this, they all use some form of spatial computing to map and understand and interact safely, move safely through the physical world, right? So that's all part of the broad realm of spatial computing also. But I think if you want to talk more about the mechanics of gaming, or what gaming, what's driving the enormous popularity of gaming, right? Which is, people talk about gamification of experiences, right? Which is how to make these experiences more engaging, more sticky, where people have more enthusiasm or more motivation to use them, right? I think gamification broadly is definitely showing up in everything from Amazon warehouses. Like I had a friend actually whose kid was working in an Amazon warehouse and talked about how so much of his workday, there are these gamified systems that not just for measuring performance, but also for kind of introducing some amount of fun and competitiveness in how you interact and move things around and load and unload and label, all these things that people do. And so I think the mechanics of gamification are showing up in many different aspects as well. But I'll stop there because maybe you have some other thing you want to focus on.
Yeah, just besides the spatial computing and AI, I would love to hear your opinions on what can we learn from the games and what can we apply to the day-by-day business. You already say we are gamifying everything, but is there anything else that you think we could apply in our day-by-day jobs?
Another thing that's kind of an obvious thing that gaming, particularly internet-based, massively multiplayer games is done really, really well is create a sense of connectedness for people, right? I mean, during the pandemic, during the peak hype wave of this metaverse idea recently, when Roblox was becoming, clearly this not just a massively popular gaming platform, but also a place for people to hang out with their friends. I remember starting to hear, the first time I heard younger people talk about, like, I'm going to go hang out with my friends in Roblox. My brain was kind of activated because I realized, oh, that's a different way. It's not I'm going to go play a game. It's I'm going to go be with my friends. And that, like, Roblox is a place to be with your friends. That was a shift in how people are thinking about what this technology can do. So it's really about, and this goes back, I think, to helping solve the fragmentation of society. One of the things that I think a lot of us really realized during the pandemic was that just as kind of feed-based social media, this asynchronous feed focus of social media was creating a sense of disconnection and loneliness and FOMO and all these things. Real-time interaction, like we're doing now, but like people also do when they're using Roblox or other games, that sense of we're doing this together right now in real time is nourishing for humans. It really helps us feel connected with each other, even if not physically together. Of course, there's no replacement for physical presence, but like real-time interaction, especially when we can hear each other's voices, which is often true with these games, right? It's I think it's a very hopeful thing because there are 100 million people worldwide that are playing these games. And personally, I feel like it'd be better if these games were not focused so much on first-person shooting and like combat. I mean, I get it. It's very exciting. It's very adrenaline, driven. But a lot of it also creates this sense of we're doing something together as people. And I think that's very valuable. So, but to bring it back to business, I think business is really, especially in this era of more and more normalized remote work, distributed work, right? I think the businesses that are looking at these principles and thinking about how can we bring people together more and more in real time, instead of like these kinds of Zoom or Google Meet video calls, I think are valuable, but like we don't feel like we're physically together, right? Like the few of us, we're talking, we can see each other, we're not our heads, but like we don't feel like we're together. But there are technologies emerging now, and they don't even necessarily require headsets, but where we can feel more present with each other. Part of it is honestly everything we do in these Zoom calls or similar things is scheduled, right? It's like we're going to meet at 7 p.m. Brazil time. We're going to do this thing. But humans need this kind of serendipity, like, oh, I just ran into this person and we had this conversation, and that was really exciting. You know, that prompts creativity, and I think we're missing that when we don't go to the office every day. And personally, I feel like that's an area where we really want to invest more in, like figure out how can we create conditions for digital serendipity where not everything has to be scheduled all the time, that we can just run into each other unexpected digitally. Does that make sense? So I think of this as kind of a prompt. Like I don't think any platform is really solving that, other than if you go hang out in Roblox all day, you're probably gonna run into your friends if they're on there, you know. So hopefully, I guess we have more time. We can keep chatting a little bit. Renato, you know how much time we have here.
Oh, we have more, probably about 15 minutes. Yeah.
Just one word for Charles. Just one thing I see that games are amazing for business when you are resilience. It's impossible to start a game, and it's almost impossible to start a game and win the first trial. So I think resilience is something that you learn when you are playing any kind of games, and it's very useful in business. So, and also game for me is like a small version of reality. So you have a reality over there, and you have to deal with people, cooperate, etc. So it's a practice for reality, and we can. I think we should have I don't know more business games. So just 2 words now. Betito, it's your...
Yeah, great. It's very interesting, Neil, because you have mentioned it several times about the relationship with between the humans, and we have Charles Betito, that he's a mental health expert. He works with corporate education, and he also master in how can I say, Charles, meditation also. All the things related to mind, we have a mind expert here. And so, Charles Betito, it's up to you now.
Thank you, Grau. It's an honor to be here, and I've been listening to you. It's great, and I just before I just come with my question, I just have to recognize the 2 terms that were like Neil said, and my dear Xará, as we call in Brazil, people who have the same name, just put it in our chat, talking about real-time interaction and digital serendipity. That's great, man. I love that. I just wrote an article about the work, right? So the presential, the live work, and the hybrid, and also the home office things. And then we are like understanding everything incorrectly, because we have a lot of opportunities to interact with each other. We just need to know how to use our autonomy, right? And to make those things happen. So it's about human connection, and nothing. Well, actually, I'm not seeing anything that will substitute a human like connection, right? So it's great. Thank you very much. But what I would like to ask you is that you introduced the concept of near futurism, which I thought was great as well, and focusing on short-term innovations. And how can business effectively identify and capitalize on immediate opportunities without one thing that is important without losing sight of long-term goals?
Yes, this is a great question. I think we were touching on it earlier, in the conversation with Marta pointing to long now and further futures. I think so for me, the working answer in my own work has been these concepts of connected ecosystems and evolution over time, like the idea of evolving business models, right? So one of the things I mentioned almost in passing, like very briefly in this year's talk, but I'm super interested in is, what if we could, using AI agents, using robotics, using all these technologies that are starting to become more well distributed, what if we could set up our businesses so that they automatically evolve in response to conditions changing, disruptions that happen? Because and this is a kind of biomimicry, right? Like the way natural ecosystems do. If you look at a forest, right? And in Brazil, you have experience of this with your forests and fires, just like we do in the US, of course. And so there can be very ecologically disruptive things that happen, fires, floods. I know you've all been struggling, and I've been in touch with many people in the South and how difficult that's been, but like these huge events that happen. And to some extent, it's not just individual humans, but also our businesses that need to respond to these things. I just have this idea, and it's still an early stage idea, I think, but like, if we think of business models as ecosystems, which I think makes sense, it's not just these static, I don't know how many of you've used business model canvas. It's kind of a way of mapping out a business model, right? That's been popularized over the last, 15 years. Like human-centered design, or like design thinking, I feel like this is a very powerful idea or method that's kind of run its course. Like we're at a point now where we need some new, more sophisticated, more advanced models for things, because a business is not something that you fill out these blocks and a canvas and say that's that. It's continually evolving, and I think it makes more sense to think of it as a living thing that evolves, just like we are as individuals. And so anyway, I won't belabor this point, but I feel like there's something in this idea that it's like a thread I'm pulling on, and I'm going to work this more into next year's South by Talk and my upcoming keynote, about how can we use agents in this agentic era to help our businesses automatically evolve in response to disruptions, right? Just like natural ecosystems, because nature is very, very good, right, at whether it's a huge storm or a flood or a fire, recovering and coming back to an equilibrium over time, right? One of the things that, I'll just add one more thing. I have this passion for mushrooms, and especially edible mushrooms, but also psychedelic mushrooms. But edible mushrooms that I've gone, so I used to live in California. I live in New York now, but for many years I've gone out to the Sierra Nevada mountains in California because every year there are fires in these forests. Most of them are unplanned, and some of them are very destructive, but always the year after, you go to a place where there was a big fire last year, huge quantities of morel mushrooms, these very delicious, choice edible mushrooms. Have you heard of morels? They're very special here. Yes, you're exactly right. Every mushroom is edible, some only once. Anyway, my point about the morels is just that these mushrooms are the fruit of this organism called a mycelium, right, that lives in the soil all the time. And when there's a fire, that activates the production of these mass quantities of mushrooms, and that's part of the healing process for the soil, for the forest ecosystem to recover from a fire. And it's very delicious for us too, right? If you go and pick them. So I just want to do more and work together with people to do more to help our businesses apply these kind of biomimicry kinds of principles, like behave more like nature does, evolve more like nature does. So
that's really interesting, man. And I remember one of the Renato Grau's specialist letter, as we may call it, Carta do Especialista. He brought something that I was studying about a computer that mimics the brain. And when we create some restrictions on the neural networks, the computer starts to actually behave like a brain, as a human brain. So it's really interesting. And now we can apply that same logic to businesses and make it more fluid. So thank you for your answer. It was really great. And my second question to you, if I may, is I'd like to ask you, with the advent of technologies like the Apple Vision Pro, which I haven't tested yet, even though I'm an Apple guy, as I say, I have an Apple shirt. So spatial computing is now becoming more mainstream. And how do you foresee spatial computing and augmented reality transforming industries such as retail, logistics, and corporate training?
yeah, thanks. I share this. I actually don't be too jealous, but I have an Apple Vision Pro here, because we can get them in the States. I saw the list of countries that are getting it next, and Brazil's not on the list, but I will, when I come to Brazil, I will bring mine so you can all try it. It's an amazing device. As we were talking about earlier, shipping, logistics, warehouse operations, and the training and education functions of a lot of these businesses are already using these headsets. I mean, Vision Pro is a bit too expensive and kind of overkill. Like, it's not necessary for many of these contexts. Although, if you Google, what businesses are using Vision Pro, there are surgery practices. There are other kinds of contexts where having very high resolution content visible while you're performing a detailed operation is really, really valuable. So there are those early use cases. I think, we were talking about sort of the 5 to 10 year horizon earlier, Martha. I mean, I think for me right now, it feels like face computers were, the future manifestation of what Apple Vision Pro is now, or what Meta's Quest is now, or other headsets. I think it's going to be towards the end of this decade that we see kind of mass market ready versions of these things, lighter weight glasses, where there's this sweet spot between weight, battery life, visual appearance, usefulness, right? I mean, all these things kind of need to come together before their general purpose. But in the meantime, like we're saying, a lot of people have had the experience of being in an immersive space, whether it's a game or an immersive video. Apple has this amazing thing you may have seen, which is like they have this, like you're in the land of dinosaurs and you have these Tyrannosaurus Rex and these things, and it's scary realistic. I mean, but it's very expensive to make this kind of content now, and it's so. But on the other hand, they do have Disney, as one of the companies that's investing in this, and Disney is starting to release immersive versions of like Marvel Universe content. So it's going to keep moving in an interesting direction, because these companies with more money than anybody are investing in it, right? And one of the things that I often say to people when they ask about is VR, is spatial computing ever really going to be a thing, is going back to the idea of reality is largely what we create. We've been seeing, there's been this visual shorthand, like this visual representation of the future for many, many years. That's just someone wearing a headset, someone with a VR headset on their face. You know what I mean? Like I travel to airports and like you see some big billboard in an airport for Deloitte or Accenture or whatever. And if they want you to think about the future, they have someone in a headset. That's like, it's weird. Like, why is it still this way? I think it's because we just expect it. Like, and you've got so much money and so much effort being invested in making this happen. It's going to happen eventually. It's just on a slow time cycle.
Thank you very much. It's great.
Yeah, thank you.
Neil, we are running out of time. I would like to call Marta for the final considerations.
Just one. Thank you so much. It was wonderful to be with all of you here, Neil, especially you. Thank you for the insights. And just a last one view of provocation. This content, immersive content, is really expensive. This is why Second Life was something complicated to spread. But now with the generative AI, I think the speed of development of this kind of content must accelerate as well. And maybe the prices are going to go down. So let's wait and see what the future holds for us. Thank you so much. It was wonderful. We need to keep talking, all of us. It's wonderful.
Absolutely. And maybe Renato can make another session here, or we can just create our own, right? Why not?
Great, Neil. It was very special for us. I would like to thank you, Marta, both Charles and Ana Flávia. We had a wonderful talk today, and you are awesome, Neil. I think my colleagues also think about you the same as I had our impression when I meet you in South by Southwest. Thank you very, very much. And I'm asking for you now your final considerations and say goodbye to Trends News, our followers.
Muito obrigado to you, Renato, and to everybody, Marta and Charles. You say Charles, yeah, or Charles? I mean,
yes. I mean, it's okay. Yeah.
And it's really a great pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much. And it's very exciting to continue being in conversation with all of you and the Brazilian friends that I've met and the ones I haven't met yet that I'm excited to meet this summer. As I was mentioning earlier, there are 2 conferences coming up in Brazil that I'm planning to be at. One is the KES Summit at the end of August, and another is the festival, the Clube de Criação.
Sim.
In October. So, anyone who finds this conversation interesting, I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram, preferably LinkedIn. That's where I mostly am. And hopefully we can meet up in person in the near future. So thank you again so much.
Great. Thank you very much. In Portuguese now. Pessoal, muito obrigado pela presença de todos. Tivemos mais de 200 e tantas pessoas participando hoje e temos que agradecer. Esperamos ter atendido, né, as expectativas de todos, não só dos nossos convidados nacionais, mas os internacionais que apareceram, nossos novos seguidores, e pedimos sempre para assinarem nosso canal. Sigam Trends News, sigam Nil, Marta Gabriel, Charles Betito, Charles Schweitzer, Ana Flávia Ribeiro. Estamos aí para, como dissemos durante a nossa sessão, para conseguir espalhar notícias, tendências, gerar reflexões. É isso que o Trends News tem de grande missão para vocês. Um beijo no coração de todos e até uma próxima.
Bye bye.
Bye, see ya. Sextou.